Okay, I'm going to try this as I've sent everybody an email and told all of you. I had my computer freeze up, so I had to go in and end the meeting. Um, and hopefully I can get through it here. I'm over in the office trying to get this done. So we'll see if we can make it happen. Today is, of course, the 26th, and we're over. This is Module 8. Of course, we had spring break last week. And so we're moving into some new territory. And we're going to look at a couple of things that are a little different in terms of the type of data that we're working with. First of all, we're going to look at a case par nonlinear, where we assume that data are nonlinear. In other words, the solution or the feasibility area for the solution doesn't configure itself like it would in a linear setting, as opposed to nonlinear, which would be like a concave, a convex, and that case, par nonlinear, is over on page 407 and 409, okay, in the textbooks. And so we're using Solver, and we're using it in a different manner to find a feasible solution. Now, as I've said before, we always have to be mindful of the type of data points that we're working with, okay? And we have to make certain about what we put into Solver, that we know that the data we have are valid and useful, and I've talked with you about those different approaches to get them. So you have the par nonlinear. Now, before we go into this, all right, and let me say this, I have an explanation for you at a Zoom recording that you can go and take a look at, and it would be well worth your time to see it. Many times you're going to run into into problems that don't fit, the classic linear trend model. You're going to find stuff. You're going to encounter situations like marginal revenue, marginal cost, where there's at the top of the concave or the bottom in terms of a convex, and we're looking at those types of distribution points. And so I encourage you to go over there and take a look at that recording. It is certainly well worth your time, okay? Now, we'll go back over into Zoom, and we'll go back into the modules area and here for Module 8. And I want to make sure that you're aware of what's going on, because we have Good Friday, we don't have any classes. So the work that is due this week is due Thursday at 5 p.m. All right, and there are two assignments that you're to upload. One is the cluster analysis, and this is the one that we're going to take a look at here today, and we will also on Wednesday. All right, that deals with the cluster analysis is where we're going to use it to identify market segments. And here we're going to be dealing with what we call unstructured data. And as we get into it, you'll see what we're talking about. This is from the Data Smart text, okay? Now, the other is, of course, par nonlinear, okay? And you'll need to upload them. Par nonlinear is over there in pages 407 to 409, Appendix 8.2, and it talks about solving nonlinear problems. They walk us through that process. And here we have Par Inc., which is this firm that makes these bags, and we've been dealing with them. And here's the solution, okay, in terms of maximizing the total profits. All right, and in this we're going to use the GRG, the generalized reduced gradient technique, okay, and that algorithm, okay, it's from calculus. Ooh, I know you're already crossing yourselves and praying no, and a calculus called the gradient, and so we're going to use it to evaluate. We use it as the model. Remember, in management science, we always use a model, okay, and then we build a mathematical representation of it, okay, and if we can, we build a physical representation of it. We might even build a iconic representation of it, say like a flow chart, and then the physical model itself. But the advantage of this is we can build mathematical models, and we can take a look at possible outcomes. And again, that's what I've always stressed is, what is the possible outcome? what could happen. Okay, it's not, we can't look at decision making in a binary manner. Now, the par nonlinear key, and I'm going to open this up. This is the same one that's over there on page 408, and we'll talk about it. Okay. All right, and here we are. Okay, and one of the things that I ask you to do and is to go through and use the different what-if analysis tools, and that's before we work with Solver. And that would be, I can try the scenario manager, okay, but I'm going to try goal seek, okay, because what I want to do is maximize my total profits. Now I'm going to click on data and come over here to Solver, and you'll see that, pardon me, that's weird. The value, I have a target value of $65,000, okay, in terms of maximum profit. Here are the changing variable cells. These are the variables I'm going to change. And it's B16 through C16. And obvious, that's the bags produced. How many bags are we going to make? And then we have the constraints. Those are outlined down there in B21 to 24 and D21 to 24. And we have, this involves the hours available, the time available to perform the cutting and dyeing, the sewing, the finishing, the inspection, packaging. And then we have, of course, also the marginal cost data. Now, here I'm gonna use the GRG nonlinear, okay, and let's run that and see what we get. Okay, and it does find it says a solver couldn't find a feasible solution. All right. Then one of the reasons I want to emphasize that all this process in here, okay, is the iterative process I follow, 1 through 4B. I walk through some iterations. I try goal seek, and I try changing the standard bags produced. I try and we didn't get a solution here because we didn't get 65,000 was our target value, so we don't have a solution, official solution. We do have a solution, but not an official one for all intents and purposes. And as I walk you through, we try to use the goal seek. You know, we could use the scenario manager. We apply it to these different variables up here. For example, trying to change some issues as far as the marginal cost of these bags. You said, why would you attack that? Because the marginal cost is certainly going to play into contribution margin, and certainly marginal cost is a piece of the whole cost equation, okay, and the revenue model. So we want to be mindful of that. And again, if I try the marginal cost for the deluxe bags, you'll note here in 4A, if I get the marginal cost down from 150 to 100, okay, I get a feasible solution. I get a solution. If I take the standard marginal cost on the standard bags down to 70, okay, down to 37, I'm good. So I want you to look at this, okay? And the whole point is not the specific answer, the process I went through. This is really 1 through 4B, okay? I'm really doing a drill down, taking a look at this problem. I'm doing just basic through some iterations, through a little bit of exploration to see what type of solution that I can get, okay? And that's, and that's really, you know, what we can do. Now, we'll go back here to the solver for just a minute, okay? And the when we do the solving model, we can also try to do the evolutionary. Although, let me say this, evolutionary is kind of, that's when I'm dealing with data. I really don't know anything at all about the data points, or I just want to do some exploration. I don't know that it's that useful because I don't know in business that we run into problems that are so unique in terms of data points or distributions that we've never seen them before. It's just not there. Okay, we have a pretty good handle on the variables we're dealing with. We have a pretty good idea of the intervening variables and the independent variables and the dependent variables, and so the evolutionary is not that good. Okay, now also on this is the sensitivity report, okay, which shows you the reduced gradient. Okay, and as you can see here on these final values, we haven't reduced the gradient one bit. We've got the best results we're going to get. Now, if I come down here, here's the Lagrange multiplier, okay, and the final values on each of these, you can see where cutting and dyeing, the hours used, has a multiplier effect, okay, and let me pop this down here for just a second, and I want to go ahead and give you a new, let's give you a new tab here. All right, I'll move that over. And let's look for the Lagrange multiplier. And I'm going to leave it to you to learn a little bit more about it. As you'll note here, I just did a quick search here. It's a method of optimization. And you'll notice here, if you look, okay, here you're going to see this, the feasible solution area looks kind of like an egg if we've got an XY chart, okay? And what we're trying to find are the local maxima and minima, the local solutions. Now, we've not talked about this too much. I've mentioned in passing. There's a difference between a global solution when we're working with solver, okay, or optimization versus local solutions, okay? And the point is this, it pretty much says, it is what it says, okay? And so if we assume that we've got some type of curvilinear solution line here through these kind of an egg-shaped distribution of points, there we are. Okay, so that's what they're talking about there. And I'm not going to go too much further into it because what you're paid for is to make decisions, all right? And if you walk through the iterative process, okay, on the model, you try some solving methods, you're going to do about as good a job in looking at the range of possible outcomes. That's why you have the solver tool, is not to get the solution, to find the range of possible solutions. And I give you that process there to drill down, okay, so you can do that and get that accomplished. Now we're going to come back after we go through the Data Smart textbook, and we'll come back with some other cases and move on through the remainder of the Anderson text, and that's the big one. Now I'm going to close this off, and this is the file that you're going to want to upload, okay? And then I had a little bit of my machine froze up on me. Okay, now let's go back into the modules area. And well, excuse me. Before we do that, let's take a look at the foreman text in the files. Now, just by way of introduction, this course, this textbook, Data Smart, is a textbook that was is a book that was authored by a guy who is the Chief Information Officer at MailChimp. MailChimp is a commercial mail email service that provides assistance for businesses, especially in terms of helping them deal with spam, helping them identify from tweets or from likes or comments, expressions about their company or a product or a service, okay? So they can go out also and harvest data from Twitter or from Facebook, etc. Now, in this book, we're going to see what I call, or what people call, data wrangling, where we're going to go in, we're going to take some unstructured data, okay, and we're going to utilize some functions out of Excel that will help us clean those data up and make some sense of them. And now, chapter one of the book is kind of an introduction to spreadsheets. If you want to look over it, feel free, but it's not necessary. You really just shouldn't have. I just don't even see the point of you messing with it. But if you want to, go ahead. Okay. Now, where we're going to begin, all right, is over in chapter 2, and this is, and we're going to use a cluster analysis. What we mean by cluster analysis is where we try to determine if 2 or more very independent variables, okay, are the extent to which they associate with or are linked to a dependent variable, or variable of measure, or variable of interest. Okay. Now, in this situation, we're going to use K-means cluster to look at market clusters. So if you're a marketing major, you really want to have pay attention, because this is definitely an area where you're going to. This is definitely some skills you're going to want to have and understand. And as a marketer, you obviously should know, buy decisions are not just a simple decision. There are factors that lead a person through that. That's why you do a Markov analysis, for example. And we also know that people have certain profiles, and that profile is based on variables. So we're going to try to see if we can take a set of data, and just to get you wound up, this involves a company that sells wines. And we're going to try to see if we can identify a particular type of deal that is some kind of promotion, and who buys what. Is there a market cluster? Okay. Now, if you the Data Smart Text is a smaller one, okay, a smaller textbook, and if you go in, you'll find it has a companion website, okay, where you can go get the files. Also, you'll see, all right, here are the Foreman files, and those are the zip files, all right, that we're going to want to work with. Now, I'm going to download those files. I'll let it do that. And I'm going to throw it down here on my desktop. All right. And then I'm going to open it up. Okay. And you're going to see chapter 2. And you'll see the wine KMC Excel file. And that's the file that we're going to be working with. Now, in chapter 2, what Foreman is going to do is introduce us to a thing called exploratory data mining. Now, if you've taken BISS 4403, okay, or are taking it, then you understand what we're doing. When we do exploratory data mining, we're essentially using what we would call serendipitous queries to try and see. This is kind of a what-if analysis. Well, what about this, or what about that? We're data mining. We're exploring the data. We're taking that data cube, okay, that we've talked about, and we're slicing through it. This is called slicing and dicing. In this case, he's trying to identify some market clusters, and we have some transactional data from some customers. Okay. Now, in the middle of page 30 in the text, he talks about the difference of supervised versus unsupervised machine learning. And it's a little bit beyond, it's a little bit beyond the text and the course. We're just kind of exploring and letting the data take us where we want. Okay. Now, and he differentiates this from what we call supervised machine learning. Supervised machine learning, in the simplest way I know how to put it, and I understand it, is you have programming, okay, that basically sets parameters and gives responses based to whether parameters are met or not, like just a giant bunch of conditional statements. Okay, that's how I understand it to be. It's and the programmer has crafted those into the software. Okay, now the author over on page 30 and 31, he's trying to kind of be cute, so he talks about, you know, the first middle school dance, and really what he's starting to introduce us to are some concepts, okay, back that will recognize from geometry. All right, now I want to go back here for just a moment into the modules area, okay, and down here I have a whole series of resources: concave versus convex functions, economic models of nonlinear functions, and those and Voronoi diagrams, okay, because we're going to run into some of those, and then cluster analysis, the SAS, a stat, its product, JMP company, they have their product, and we're going to be using some Excel functions that are more database oriented than we usually do, and then I have some resources on distances, silhouettes, and selecting the number of clusters with what we call a k-means clustering approach. Okay, and there's much to swallow here, okay, and I'm not assuming you know, you could just sit down and write this out yourself. This guy's, he's scary smart, let's put it like that. Well, let's open up the line KMC and take a look at it, okay, and you really are not going to get the benefit of this unless you know, unless you're just not getting any benefit from it if you don't follow along in the text. It's the same as the par nonlinear, okay, where I walk you through an iterative process to explore that. Okay, now let's take a look at this, and we start off first of all with this first tab, and this calls offer information. So they're running promotions, okay, and he has some data, and let's look at these dimensions, i.e. variables, okay, the campaign, all right, the type of wine, the minimum quantity, the discount, the origin, that's the country of origin, and is it past its peak, okay, in other words, freshness, okay. And we look to see you know, who chose what these offers are, okay. So we just basically have just a straight table. Now this is, if you've had 4403 with me, you know where we've talked about just simply fact tables, okay, or dimension tables. This is really kind of a fact table that just lists some facts. It's really a dimension table for all intents and purposes, because we have the dimensions of the campaign, the type of wine, minimum quantity, the origin, and is it past its, how fresh is it past its peak or not. Okay, and we're going to walk through some more of this on Wednesday. I'll do the I'll do a screencast for Wednesday. Remember, it's going to be pre-recorded. I've got some meetings I got to go to. So for the Wednesday morning, the screencast for Wednesday, I'll take some more time as we go through this. Okay. Now, here we have the transaction data. Now remember, we started with this offer information. Then we have the data on transactions, the customer's last name, all right, and what offer did they take. And we can go back over here to the offer information. As you can see, we have these offers. Okay. 2 through 33. And of course, we have multiple purchases, and you'll see as we go through here, and just to kind of get a good handle on this, just kind of get a feeling. I'd click at the top here, and I'm gonna come over here and look at the filter and take a look at everybody and just see how they all cluster. And then I might take a look and see how, name by name. Just kind of getting a feeling of the data and what it looks like. All right, and then I'll just come back over here and I'll toggle that off. So we have the customer last name, and then we have the offer that they accepted, and that's offer number 2 for Smith. And then Smith also did 24. Then we've got Johnson, and right now, having these two pieces of information, linking the offer to the customer name, gives us some real insights. Because now, what I could do would be to take this data, okay, and slap it into a pivot table and play around with it, or I could do a sort to find out, I could do a sort to put them in terms of offer number, descending to ascending, and then alphabetize them. I could do a custom sort. Well, and we've got, let's see, I think how many transactions have we got? We'll pop it back up here. I don't remember how many. We have 325 transactions. So I'm going to come over here to the sort and filter. I'm going to do custom sort. Make sure my data has headers. Okay. And I'm going to sort by the values, and I'm going to do that by offer number. Okay. And I'm going to take, well, we can stick with largest to smallest. In fact, what I want to do here, instead I want to use the customer last name, and then okay, and we have the offer in terms of its ascending value. So we'll click down on that, and now we can see what Adams bought, what Anderson bought, Baker, etc. And we could do a little bit of work there, and again, just do a little bit of preliminary exploration of that to see what this looks like in terms of purchases. And so we'd want to go and find out who responded to our offers the most. But we're trying to find out, okay, the offer is the key, because the offer represents those dimensions that attracted that customer, or assumed dimensions. And so we're going to try to do a cluster analysis to find, are there certain customers, okay, or are there sets of transactions that have a similar profile? So we've got the transactions. Now, I am a prophet because, as I told you earlier, we could take those first two tabs and throw them into a pivot table. And that's exactly what he does over here in this third tab. Okay? Now, what I'm going to do is this, is I'm going to take my cursor and I'm going to come down all the way down. First of all, I want to get the dimensions on this jewel, and it's going to be A5 to A37, and we go all the way over here. Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. Let's get a little bit of visual acuity here. You say, what do you mean? Take your cursor and let's go over and let's zoom out a bit so we can see the whole array. Okay, and keep going, and we'll zoom it out even further. We'll zoom back up just a hair more. Okay, and there's a lot of data there. And what I would do is I would take my cursor and I'd come in and I'm going to use conditional formatting. And I'm going to highlight cells greater than 0. You say, now why did you do that? What was the point? Well, one of the reasons is I can kind of back off of this, okay? I can zoom this out now, and these are, of course, totals over here, so they're going to show up as such. But I can start to see those patterns, and I can see them visually, okay? I can look at them. Now, remember, we've always talked about that. If you had business problem analysis with me, we talk a lot about visual presentation of data. And what we have here is essentially a scattergram of sorts, or really an array, okay? It's not a scattergram. We have an array, and we've colored in anything that's greater than 0. In other words, we had said, okay, if they made the purchase, it was a 1, all right? If not, it's a null. And so anything greater than 0, we color. And so we can start to see patterns and groupings. And if you look there, you'll begin to see them. So this is, again, one of those ways for us to just kind of do some preliminary look at the data. Now, I'm going to back us out of this, okay? And we'll go back up to 100% view. And let's look at what we're dealing with. What we have is the count, okay? The author number. Now, I'm going to click inside here, and this should take us over to C. Okay? And so we have the row labels. Okay? Now, you say, where are we? Well, if you go over to page 39, all right? Now, page 38, the top page 38, he shows you he did a pivot table. He did a custom sort, okay? And by offer, and got the number of offers that for promotional deals these people took. Then he comes over here and he uses a pivot table. He shows us this here on page 39. Okay, and we have a pivot table of deals versus customers. Okay, so we can see what deals, for example, Adams took. And, you know, of course, probably what you'd want to do would be to come in here and put in all borders to make it just a little more comprehensible, because there's a lot of data here. Okay, and we'll go back here and close this par nonlinear out. Now we've got a little more room there from that error message. But nonetheless, here we can see, and we have a total, okay, by offer number per customer. Pardon me, we have a total per offer, a grand total per offer, and then we have the total per grand total per customer. So we use the pivot table then to look at those two, the customer versus the transaction number. Okay, and he's over on 38 and 39. Now, over in pages 32 through 35, again, the author tries to be humorous, and so he's telling about this middle school dance and how kids cluster themselves off, and he's trying to show us, you know, a good example of how you know, things get clustered. And cluster analysis is a tried and true tool for a lot of people. Okay. And so we're going to be using what's called the k-means cluster analysis, and this is ones where we like to see, okay, how much do certain people tend to bond together. Now, here's a good example of cluster analysis. All right, everybody who's a fan of OU at game day probably is wearing red, has something about OU, something, okay, because they are OU fans. They're at the game, okay, or they may be OU fans watching at home, whatever. So the cluster analysis, again, we take a look at this, and we're just starting with the offers, okay, accepted per customer. And that's what we're doing there, okay? And again, this is the, we've got the, and this is over on page 39, okay, in the text, where he shows us the offer by customer. And again, as I talked about, we could use the conditional formatting. And what I would recommend would be to use conditional formatting when the condition equals 1, and then come back and apply, say maybe a yellow when the condition is less than 1, and that should hopefully help set out some of the clustering. Now, if you're just looking here in the screen, you're going to see some of this, okay? And I'm just going to take a few of these, and I'm going to come over here down to I'm going to come over to Davis. All right, now these are some things you want to do for visual acuity. I'm going to come back in. I'm going to put all borders. See how much I can see them much easier. Now, I'm going to do this. I'm going to come back in, and I'm going to come over. I stopped at Diaz, excuse me. And I come all the way down to 32. Well, we've got a blank there. Let me stop for a moment and talk about that. That blank, okay, means nothing occurred. Okay, they didn't make an order. Now, I'm going to be a purist here. If you've taken database with me, you've heard me talk about the, null values are questionable because I don't know if they were left blank because they're supposed to be, or if they're left blank because somebody messed up the coding. So I would probably say in this, you'd want to have zeros if they didn't take an offer. That's just me. It's a little more work, but I won't quibble with this guy. Now, I've got some conditional formatting here, and again, I'm in the pivot tab, in the pivot table, and I'm gonna highlight the cells where it's equal to 1. Okay, I'm going to make it green. Green fill with dark green text. Isn't that pretty? All right, I'll click OK. And then I'm going to do conditional formatting, and I'm going to come back to highlight cell rules, and I'm going to put cells that are less than 1 with a nice yellow fill. Of course, I stuck with the school colors, green and gold. And now you can see, and there's just this one little set. These are maybe a third of all of the offers, but you can see there are some clusters here. Well, we can use geometry, some principles from geometry, to analyze these. Okay, we can do that, and we're going to do that when we explore this a little bit further in the screencast on Wednesday. And so, with the power nonlinear, I want to upload it. This wine KMC, this is the case for the cluster analysis, this is what you would upload. Both these are due Thursday because we're off, and I'll reiterate that again on Wednesday. But all that being said, okay, first of all, I apologize that the machine went down and went completely over there. I'm really not sure what happened. It just kind of froze itself. And so I had to take the battery out. That's why I'm doing this re-recording. But as we've wanted to, I wanted just to kind of get a handle on this so we start to understand where we're at. Now here, when we look at this on Wednesday, we're gonna start with the matrix tab, all right? And we'll talk about what that's all about. Just the pivot table itself right here has started to give us a picture that there are indeed some of these data points that cluster together. And we're gonna wanna know, okay, we're gonna want to explore those because we're trying to determine our market clusters, okay? And again, this is the YNKMC file out of the Foreman files over in Canvas. Okay, well, I'm going to end this, and then I'll be back on. I'll do as I told you, I'll do a pre-recorded screening, pre-recorded screencast for Wednesday. Okay, and then of course you have Good Friday. So I will see everybody Wednesday. So sorry about the problems that we had. Those of you who came, joined, and got kicked off, I'm very sorry about that. But this is, I came back as quickly as I could to my office, set this back up, and hopefully we've got a good start towards the week.